Mark Carney just looked Canadians dead in the face and told us that what we heard him say is not what he said. And folks, if that does not make your blood boil hotter than a double-double on a -30 morning in Winnipeg, I do not know what will. Let me tell you what happened. Carney won the election by convincing people he was the best leader to square off with Trump. He promised he could reach a broad new deal with the United States covering security as well as trade. Yet he has been unable to get even a limited agreement to lower any of the tariffs that are crushing parts of Canada's manufacturing sector. Canadians voted for this man because they genuinely believed he was the guy who could walk into a room with Donald Trump and walk back out with a deal that would protect their jobs and their livelihoods. He sold that image. He packaged it. He put a bow on it. And Canadians bought it. And now, standing in a snow-covered field somewhere in Norway, Mark Carney looked into the cameras and said he never promised to lift the tariffs. He said he promised, and I need you to sit with this for a second, the best deal for Canada. That is what he said. I promised the best deal for Canada, not getting the tariffs removed, just the best deal, whatever that means. However he wants to define it on any given Tuesday while he is standing in the Arctic chatting with European politicians who have their own problems to worry about. Right, so let me get this straight. You ran on ending the trade war. You told scared Canadians that you had the credentials, the contacts, and the credibility to make Trump blink. You won the election on the back of that promise. And now, a year later, the tariffs are still there. The economy is bleeding. And your definition of success is just calling whatever happened the best deal. That is like your hockey team giving up 6 goals in the first period, and your coach coming out between periods saying he never promised to win the game, just to play the best hockey Canada could play. Buddy, get out of here with that. Here is what is actually going on in the real Canada right now, while Carney is doing his globe-trotting routine. Canada's economy unexpectedly lost 84,000 jobs in February. That is the biggest Canadian job loss in 4 years. Many economic analysts had expected the labor market to gain 10,000 jobs. Think about that gap. Economists thought Canada would gain 10,000 jobs. Instead, 84,000 Canadians lost theirs. That is not a miss. That is not an oops. That is a gut punch to the working class of this country that no amount of fancy Nordic photo ops is going to paper over. Net employment fell by 84,000 to just over 21 million, continuing the recent downward trend. Losses were driven by a 108,000 decline in full-time employment, partly offset by a 24,500 increase in part-time work. So the full-time jobs are vanishing, and the part-time jobs are limping in to replace them. You know what that means for a regular family in Hamilton or Saskatoon or Red Deer. That means somebody who had a steady paycheck and benefits is now working weekends at Canadian Tire, hoping to get enough hours to cover the mortgage. That is Carney's Canada. Right now. Today. Young workers aged 15 to 24 faced a loss of 47,000 jobs last month. Men between the ages of 25 and 54 also faced steep job losses in February. These are the people who are supposed to be in the prime of their working lives building something for themselves. These are the young people who already cannot afford a house, cannot afford rent, and now cannot find a full-time job. And Carney is standing in Norway talking about how great the deal is. Meanwhile, Carney has the gall to stand up and brag about job creation numbers. He told reporters that over the last 6 months, Canada created over 80,000 jobs net, compared to 6,000 in the United States, which has 11 times the size of the Canadian economy. He actually said that. He compared 6 months of numbers, cherry-picked the window that suits his story, and used it to suggest Canada is outperforming the United States. But look at the unemployment rate sitting at 6.7%, while the American rate is sitting at 4.3%. Look at the trend. Look at where things are headed. 2 months in a row of job losses to start 2026. You cannot cook those numbers by choosing a different frying pan. And now let us talk about the oil thing, because this one really gets me going. Canada sits on some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. We have resources that other countries would kill for. Alberta alone to be one of the wealthiest places on Earth if Ottawa would just get out of the way. But for years, liberal governments have blocked pipelines, layered on environmental red tape, and made it basically impossible to get Canadian energy to the markets that need it. And now Carney wants to tell the world that Canada will step up and do its part to stabilize global oil supply. That is like somebody who has been padlocking their neighbor's gas pump for 10 years suddenly announcing they are going to help with the fuel shortage. You do not get credit for the reserves you will not let anyone touch. The hypocrisy is so thick you could pave a gravel road in Saskatchewan with it. Carney floats out there as this serious, responsible, grown-up statesman, and the CBC eats it up like it is a Timmy's maple dip at Christmas. But back home in the real Canada, people are spending more than they are earning. Household savings are being eaten alive. Young Canadians cannot buy a home. Seniors are choosing between groceries and heating bills. And their Prime Minister is taking selfies with NATO leaders above the Arctic Circle, telling the world he secured the best deal. Here's the thing about Mark Carney that nobody on the left wants to say out loud. He is not different from Justin Trudeau. He is just better at the optics. Trudeau was obvious about it. You could see the spin coming a mile away. Carney is slicker. He has the Goldman Sachs resume and the Bank of England credibility and the calm banker voice that makes people think someone sensible is driving the bus. But the bus is still in the ditch. The economy is still shrinking. The jobs are still disappearing. And the tariffs are still on. The only thing that changed is that the guy at the front of the bus now wears a nicer toque. Carney promised to shield Canadians from the pressures of Trump's tariffs and won an election on that promise. He announced a rapid increase in military spending to bolster the country's fragile Arctic defenses. He got to play the tough guy. He got to go around the world telling foreign leaders that Canada was back and that he was the man to lead it. And Canadians gave him the benefit of the doubt because they were scared and they wanted to believe somebody knew what they were doing. 1 year later, the tariffs are still on. The jobs are going. The economy is bleeding. And the Prime Minister's official explanation is that he never actually promised what you thought he promised. He just promised his best effort. And this right here is the best deal. 84,000 jobs lost in 1 month is the best deal. A 6.7% unemployment rate is the best deal. Young Canadians with no jobs and no housing is the best deal. You know what? If this is the best deal, I would hate to see what Carney considers a bad one. The man ran on a resume and delivered a report card you would hide from your parents. He got elected based on credentials from institutions overseas, not on anything he had ever actually done for the people of this country. He convinced voters that experience at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England made him uniquely qualified to protect Canadian sovereignty and prosperity. And here we are, standing in the wreckage of that pitch, watching him do press conferences from Scandinavia while workers in Windsor and Oshawa and Burlington stare at pink slips. Canadians are smart people. They know when they are being played. And right now, from a gravel road in Saskatchewan to a condo in Etobicoke, regular folks are starting to figure out that the man they voted for did not deliver the promise he sold. He just redefined the promise after the fact and called it a win. That is not leadership, folks. That is gaslighting. And this country deserves a whole lot better than that.